to the entertainer talking sports.
What is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. And in this video, we're going to dive into pending free agent Carl Lawson and talk about what Darius Slayton had to say about bringing in the potential free agent to the New York Giants. Now, of course, Slayton did this last year. I can't remember who it was, but he was recruiting a couple of players. I don't think the New York Giants ended up signing any of them, and this very well may mean nothing. Of course, Darius Slayton went to the same college that Carl Lawson did. Lawson went to Auburn, a former fourth-round pick, and Darius Slayton went to Twitter. I'm going to pull up the exact tweet and kind of advocated for the New York Giants to potentially give this guy a look and bring him in. Carl Lawson was a guy I was going to talk about in my underrated free agent video, which I'll probably have out in the next couple of days, of guys that the New York Giants could definitely look at. I've seen him on a number of lists of guys that may be being overlooked. For the simple reason he's not a huge name, right? He was a fourth-round pick. He's a guy that doesn't have gaudy sack numbers. He did have 8.5 sacks in his rookie season, in which he made, I think, the all-rookie team. This past year, he only had 5.5 sacks. However, he did have the second most quarterback hits in all of football, only behind T.J. Watt with 32, and we're going to jump into all of that. The other thing you may ask yourself is he a schematic fit? Of course, with the Cincinnati Bengals, he's played a 4-3 defensive end. The New York Giants run predominantly a 3-4 defense in which they'd be looking for outside linebackers. But I'll talk about why he may actually be a better fit than you think. Lawson could potentially be a versatile player that the New York Giants could bring into this defense. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is how much is he going to cost, which I think is going to be in the $9 to $10 million range per year. And if you were to bring him in, well, you know, who would that cost us? Because if you were going to bring him in for $10 million, it is more than likely that either Dalvin Tomlinson or Leonard Williams probably would not be back with the New York Giants. But let's jump into some of the things I wanted to talk about Carl Lawson. First thing was this is the tweet from Darius Slayton. Ain't no rumblings, you're bringing your talents to the Meadowlands, as he was kind of jokingly saying that to Carl Lawson, and, you know, to which Carl Lawson responded, war damn slay, which, you know, he's basically saying in so many words, yeah, I'd be potentially interested to come aboard with the New York Giants. Now, of course, you can't read much into this. This is, you know, Lawson's a pending free agent. He's trying to get as much as he potentially could on the open market. Now, according to Spot Track, this is what he's projected to make. 4 years, $35.4 million, which would be about a 10 times raise of what he was getting off his rookie deal, in which it was 4 years, about $3.3 million. And I think that's in the ballpark of what you could be expecting to sign Carl Lawson. Is it possible you could bring in a player like this if you were to sign both Tomlinson and Leonard Williams? Well, as I suggested in my free agency video, if you do certain things, sure, it is. The other thing that you got to talk about is, now, if you did this, you wouldn't be able to sign a corner more than likely, and you more than likely wouldn't be able to sign a wide receiver either if you brought back both Dalvin Tomlinson and Leonard Williams. I don't think Cincinnati's going to be able to keep both Jackson, the cornerback, and Lawson, the defensive end, and I think they're going to have to pick one or the other, and I'm interested in either one as a New York Giant fan if they were to hit the market. But I think for this price, he could make sense. This is what Cincinnati had to say. Bengals coach Zach Taylor said Cincinnati hoped to re-sign Lawson and cornerback William Jackson, a former first-round pick choice, who's also entering free agency. Those are two guys we think highly of, Taylor told The Athletic, and we want them to be Bengals for certain. You could want it, but with the lowered budget, because of the salary cap, it may not be in the cards. And if it isn't, I think the New York Giants should monitor both of these players. And I'm going to get into why he may be a better schematic fit than you may think. This is what he did last year. After bursting onto the scene as a fourth-round rookie in 2017, Lawson's sack numbers have dwindled a bit. He's recorded just 11.5 sacks over the previous 3 seasons after posting 8.5 in his first season. However, Lawson's quarterback hits have steadily risen, peaking with a career-high 32 in 2020. And as I said earlier in the video, the only guy who had more was All-Pro linebacker T.J. Watt of the Pittsburgh Steelers, who was probably the best player in football on the defensive side, him or Aaron Donald. So that's good company there. And much like Leonard Williams last year, I think he led all interior defensive linemen and quarterback hits. You saw that translate to sacks with the New York Giants. Now, in terms of his versatility and why I feel like he could potentially be a better schematic fit than you may think, his height and weight suggests he could at least play some outside linebacker in the 3-4 alignment. And coming out of college, that's where most people projected he would be playing. this is what his background was. Lawson is coming off his best season in his college career, and he was finally able to play an entire season after dealing with injuries the past few years, which is why he may have dipped a little bit in the draft. Lawson missed a 14 season with a torn ACL and was limited by a hip injury in 2015, but he bounced back to earn all SEC honors last year. When Lawson was on the field, he created problems for the offense. He averaged a sack, hit, or hurry once every 5.4 pressures last season, according to Pro Football Focus. He is creative in his pass rush moves, and he best projects as an outside linebacker in the 3-4 defensive scheme. Then they went on to talk about the Ravens. So coming out of college, most people felt like Lawson would be best suited to play exactly what the New York Giants would want. A 3-4 outside linebacker where we don't have a lot of talent there to begin with. We have a guy coming off an injury in Lorenzo Carter. We have O'Shane Ximines. And we have a number of rookies potentially from last year with guys like Cam Brown, so on and so forth, Carter Coughlin. And we don't know if we'll be bringing back Kyler Fackrell. So I think a lot of Giants fans definitely agree that we could use a more guy with more credentials at that spot. And that's exactly what Carl Lawson would bring to the table. The question would be, he's had his hand in the dirt since he's been in the NFL playing the defensive end position. He is a bit undersized, though, at 262, and maybe he would project better to be a 3-4 outside linebacker with the New York Giants. Would Lawson want to do that, being that he's played the 4-3 DN for quite some time? One thing I will say, at a bare minimum, if the Giants were to bring in Carl Lawson, I would think he'd at least be able to bring some versatility to the table, which is exactly what Joe Judge and Patrick Graham would be looking for. A guy capable of playing in both the 3-4 as an OLB and a 4-3 as a defensive lineman. That's what he could potentially bring to the table. Now, a couple of options the New York Giants may have. I think, no matter what, if the Giants cannot work out a contract extension with Leonard Williams, I think at a bare minimum, they need to franchise tag him. And then at that point, if he's showing that he may be unhappy due to that, maybe you look for potential trade possibilities for Leonard Williams, and maybe you get a second-round pick. And then if that is the case, that clears some cap, and maybe you bring in a guy like Lawson. Now, if you are to bring back both Leonard Williams and Dalvin Tomlinson, it's possible you could still sign a guy like Lawson to play that outside linebacker role, but would he be willing to play it full-time, being that he's been a defensive end in the NFL for quite some time? That remains to be seen, and whether or not the New York Giants and Joe Judge would feel like he's an ideal fit. But he's certainly a guy that I think is being a little bit overlooked when you look at the elite edge rushers in this year's free agency class, and it's a thin class to begin with. Lawson, of course, has ties to Auburn with Darius Slayton, which is why this became a story. But I was going to talk about him anyway. I've seen several people talk about him as an under-the-radar free agent, and he may be a better fit than you actually think. When I did my research, I felt like he was a better fit than I initially thought. The question, that I have mainly, though, is will Cincinnati even let him hit the open market? But if they do, he's definitely a name to monitor, as I'm sure a lot of teams will have their eyes on Carl Lawson. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe, drop a comment, maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.